What's up, YouTube? So in this video, I'm going to be going over my top 10 cornerbacks of the 2021 NFL draft class. So I have done videos on everybody on this list, just like with the other position rankings. I think all of them might be out by now. Maybe not my number 10 and 9 guy, but if not, they will be out before the draft, regardless. So, yeah. So let's go ahead and get into it. Number 10 is Ifitu Melifonwu out of Syracuse. So he is kind of a raw player, to be honest. He's 6'3" and 213 pounds, so he is a bigger corner for sure. He's actually one of the better tackling corners in the class, and he could probably give you some snaps at safety as well, which that is kind of nice, having the position versatility. He does have some real speed to him as well. That is one thing I noticed. He is athletically right there. Like, he's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the speed. He's decent in man and zone. But I do think that there are some technical issues that he could work on. Tracking the ball, knowing where the sideline is. He's pretty physical, which is nice. I just think he is a very raw talent player. I don't think he's quite as good in coverage as some of the other people on the list, which is what's keeping him as number 10. But I think he's just a really high ceiling player. And coaches are going to see 6'3", 315 and him running the way he does, and they're going to fall in love and they're going to want to draft him. So, and I do think he's a good prospect. And I think somewhere like late 3rd round or early 4th round, I think he'd be a really good player at a premier position like corner. Okay, moving on. Next on the list is Paulson Adibi out of Stanford. So he's 6'1" and 192 pounds, so he's a little bit smaller. He is a guy that opted out, so keep that in mind. I would say he does need to get his head around a little bit more, and he can be a little bit handsy. He's also not necessarily as athletic as Melifonwu, but his hips are really good. He has some long arms to him. And I think if you're like a zone coverage team, I think he's a very good player. You're not necessarily going to want him to be like... You don't want him in a situation where he's going to have a single high safety with no help over top. You kind of want him to have some help. But I think if you're like a zone coverage team, I think he's really, really good for that. And I think he's one of the better zone coverage guys in this class. But, I mean, it's an old saying that you don't typically draft corners to play zone. You draft them to play man. And honestly, at some point, zone coverage turns into man coverage, because it still turns into one man guarding another man. So, it is what it is. But he is a really good player. I think similar to Melifonwu, somewhere like late round 3 to early round 4, I think is right where he fits in. So, okay. Moving on, Eric Stokes from Georgia is my number 8 corner. So he is 6'1" and 185 pounds. He can be a little bit grabby, I have noticed, but I do think he's good in man coverage. His ball skills are there. He has everything you need physically. He has enough speed. He has enough agility. He gets the job done pretty well. I think he could give you some value at nickel, but I don't think he has to. I think he can be an outside corner for sure. I think somewhere in the 3rd round probably makes the most sense for him. I do think he is a pretty good player. He's not going to wow you, but he is going to get the job done fairly consistently. So I'll give him points there. I really do like him. So, okay, moving forward, we've got Elijah Molden. Now this guy is more of a nickel corner. But I also think that he can give you some value at strong safety. And spoiler alert, he is on my safety list as well. I won't say where he is on the list, but he is on there when I release that. So he's 5'10", 190 pounds, which is why he isn't a full-time safety, because he is kind of smaller. But he is probably the best tackling safety in this lineup. He honestly plays nickel corner like a strong safety a little bit. He loves to come down and smack somebody. He plays way bigger than he is. I think like late third round is like perfect for him. He has plenty of burst. He moves really great, and he is just a angry ass little dude. He will come down and smack you. He, like I said, his hips are good. The only thing is that he does lack some of that athleticism. He's really good moving like north-south, but he does lose some of that speed in coverage. He is really good in zone, so if you're a zone coverage team, I think he's pretty good for that. But as long as you don't put him up against someone who is way bigger or way faster than him, he's fine in coverage. But I think the best thing is just him being such an angry-ass little dude. He might be only 5'10", 190, but he is not afraid to go and smack a 6'9", fucking 400-pound man. He'll do it. It might not go his way, but he'll do it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of him. Okay, moving forward, Asante Samuel Jr. Now, yeah, he is the son of Asante Samuel, the retired NFL DB, who was also amazing. But Asante Samuel Jr. is 5'10", 185 pounds. He has enough speed to get the job done, but he does lack the big play speed that you would like, and he is pretty small, which is why people are wanting to put him at nickel, which I don't necessarily think you have to. I think he is really, really good in zone coverage, and for his size, he's a pretty decent tackler. He is very competitive. He's not afraid to smack somebody. I think he's another guy that could go somewhere in the third round. I think if you're like a cover 3 or cover 2 team, I think this guy is really, really good for that. He's one of those people that kind of like Paulson Adibi that I mentioned. Very good zone coverage corner. He is going to be held back just because he is kind of small and he is lacking some of the elite speed that some of the other guys have later in this class. But I do really like him, and I do think he can have a really good career. Just don't make him cover like Julio Jones, who's going to jump over his head. As long as if you pick his matchups well, he can be pretty solid in the league. I really do think so. So. Okay, so moving forward is the most physically impressive person on this list. Caleb Farley. So he's 6'2" and 207 pounds out of Virginia Tech. So he's definitely got the length you want. He's pretty physical. He's by far the fastest person on this list. His hips are really, really good. But he is kind of raw. He doesn't really get his head around, which is the biggest problem with him, and that allows him to get beat, especially on deep routes, even though he is very fast. He also can get kind of grabby sometimes, which is going to cause some penalties. And I do think he's solid right now, but he is just very, very raw. Like I said, he's grabby. He doesn't get his head around. Just overall, his technique is the most unpolished out of, especially out of this top 5. But if he can, develop the technique problems and really sure that away, he has the highest ceiling possibly out of this entire class because he's got it there physically. And also he did have an injury too, but I'm not really taking that into account. I'm just looking at these guys as prospects. So, but that is a thing to look into as well. But Yeah. So moving on. By the way, if there's any background noise, I apologize. My neighbor's dog is starting to bark, but whatever. So moving forward, Patrick Surtain out of Alabama. This is probably my most controversial take, him being number 4. I know a lot of people have him even as high as number 1. I definitely can't put him there. He is a good player. He's 6'2" and 202 pounds. He is very, very good. He is the most technically sound person in this class. He's basically the opposite of Caleb Farley, where Caleb Farley is the most athletically impressive, but the least impressive as far as technique goes out of this entire list. Patrick Surtain is the exact opposite of that. He might be the least impressive physically, but he is the most impressive technically. So it kind of depends on what you want there. If you want to put Farley above Surtain, I can understand that. He was up there for me for a little while, but the more I've watched both of them, I just can't justify that. This is why I always say that my final opinion doesn't happen until I make a video like this, where it is finalized. And you just kind of have to think, if they both get into the best position possible for them, who's going to have more success? And I have to give it to Surtain. So he is very, very good in coverage. Like, his hips are good. He gets his head around very well. He's good in man and zone. He's pretty much good at anything physical. He is a willing tackler, I'd say. He's really great in the slot. That might even be where he'd be best. I know people take it as a slight to want to put people at nickel corner, but I think he'd be a monster at nickel. I really, really do. But the big thing with him is that he is lacking that long speed, and he is also lacking that quick agility. So the really twitchy, quick route runners give him problems, and the real fast burners give him problems. So it kind of just depends on where you want what you're looking for. Like, and keep in mind too, this list is specifically just a generalized list. If, like, I'm a Dolphins fan, I do a lot of Dolphins content. If this was for the Dolphins, Farley would be above Surtain, because the Dolphins do a lot of zero blitzes with no safety help, and I do not like that idea for Patrick Surtain because he does lack that long speed, and Farley does not. But just in general, I think Surtain is the better player. So it just depends. If you run like a cover 2 or cover 3 team where there's always going to be a safety back there to get him out of trouble if something happens, or if he's up against someone faster than him, then you're going to be fine. And also, if you just don't make him play against people that are faster than him, you'll be fine. Like, if you're a team that already has another corner to match up against their speed guy, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. Like, for example, let's say you're playing against the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Arguably the most explosive offense in the league. If you put Patrick Surtain against Travis Kelce, he'll be fine. He'll shut down Travis Kelce for the most part. Travis Kelce probably makes some plays on him because Kyle Pitts was able to. But for the most part, he'll do fine. But if you put him against Tyreek Hill by himself, he's going to have some problems. So you just kind of have to play matchup with him. That's really all it is. Also, in case I forgot to mention, Caleb Farley and up, they're all first-round corners to me. They could possibly slide to the second round, depending on how the board moves, because draft gets weird sometimes. But I think that all 5 of them are worthy of being first-round talents, and corner is a premier position as well. But next on the list is Greg Newsom. This is where a lot of people would probably be kind of upset with me, is the fact that I put Newsom over Surtain. But I think it's kind of justified because you're not worrying about that speed as much. So he is 6'1" and 190 pounds out of Northwestern. Um, he has really solid hips. He's good in man and zone. He has the athleticism to get the job done. He's not as good of a tackler as Surtain, I will say. He doesn't really show like he wants to tackle at all. He has the athleticism to recover when he does make mistakes. He's very competitive. He's got ball skills and he's got burst. Like I said, I think that Surtain is is technically way more impressive than Newsom. And if you are like a cover 2 or cover 3 team where you're always going to have safety help, taking Surtain over Newsom does make sense. But with Surtain, it just depends on what team you are. With Newsom, I think he's going to be a good player regardless of what team drafts him. So that's really what it is. I think if the right team gets Surtain, he'll be the better player than Newsom. But Newsom, he doesn't have those limitations. Any team can draft him and he'll be successful barring like an injury or something. Because you can't predict stuff like that. But, yeah. But alright, moving on. And this is where things start to get really fun. Because these next 2 players I love. The next one is Kelvin Joseph out of Kentucky. Now, as a corner, he is debatably the most talented person here. It's right up there with our number 1. And after you've seen everybody, it's no surprise my number 1 is J.C. Horn. But I'll talk about Kelvin Joseph first. So he's 6'1" and 192 pounds. He sinks his hips very low, very nicely. He flips his hips very, very well. He has plenty of speed. He's definitely not lazy. He's willing to make tackles when he needs to. He gets his head around very well. He is a little bit grabby, so that will get some penalties sometimes. He has ball skills, instincts. He is fantastic in man and zone coverage. With zone coverage, it's mostly cover 3 that Kentucky did with him, but I think he can do any of it. His play IQ is fantastic. He's very patient. He can fit on any scheme you want. He'll be great no matter what team drafts him. He's a willing tackler, like I said. And he uses the sideline to great effect. And he's also really good with physicality. The only thing that limits him is because, J.C. Horn... You know what? I'll talk about J.C. Horn, and then I'll get into why Kelvin Joseph is below him. So I can make the comparison. So J.C. Horn is out of South Carolina. He's 6'1" and 205 pounds. He is someone that opted out. I know a lot of people aren't interested in people that opted out for some strange reason. He is much more handsy than Kelvin Joseph, and that's going to cause flags at the next level. But he reads the quarterback's eyes really well. He has great instincts, good athleticism. His hips are great. His movement is really good. He has great ball skills. He sticks to his man very well. He isn't the tackler that Kelvin Joseph is, I will say. And again, he also has plenty of athleticism. So technique-wise, athletically speaking, they're both pretty even. As just pure corners, I'd probably give the edge to Kelvin Joseph. But the issue is that they are really close in skill. But then you look at off-the-field problems. And that's what bumps Kelvin Joseph down. Because he is very much, choke your coach out guy. He is very much so, gun under the seat guy. All these things. He has a rap career, which is, I don't really care about that. He can have interests outside of football. That doesn't bother me. But he has a lot of behavioral problems that kind of keep him below J.C. Horn for me. I think J.C. Horn is the better pick because of that. Because J.C. Horn doesn't really have much of a but wait like Kelvin Joseph does. And to be fair, neither is Greg Newsom. He's just not as talented as Joseph or Horn. Farley is athletic as hell, but raw. Surtain is technical as hell, but he's not as athletic. Newsom is a pretty good combination of both, but he's just not as talented as Joseph or Horn. Kelvin Joseph is probably the most talented corner in this entire class, just barely edging out Horn, but he's got behavioral problems. The only issue Horn has is that he's a little bit grabby. That's it. And coaching can fix grabby. And really, as long as it's not drawing penalties, I'm okay with grabby until he gets a flag. So that's kind of my thinking on why it is ranked the way it is. I know this is going to be highly debated on where people fall on these guys. If you want to put Kelvin Joseph lower because of the behavioral problems, I understand it. I can't justify doing it. If you want to put him above Horn because he is technically more talented, I completely understand your thinking. I really had to think about this hard, whether or not it was Joseph or Horn, my cornerback one. It's a very difficult decision for me. But to me, their skills are close enough where the behavioral problems knock Joseph down one. So, it is what it is. But I love both of them. But anyway, if you like this video, I appreciate you hitting that like button. If you have any questions or comments, in the comments down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.